Yeah, everybody, welcome to the first in a series of lectures that Jeff Kipnis is going to be giving this semester here at SCI-Arc. Both this open lecture for the graduate students and the whole school, really. And then there are a series of master class lectures. There'll be one tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Those are required for the thesis prep, the graduate thesis prep students, but everybody's welcome to attend that as well. And those will cover slightly different topics, so it's highly advisable if you have time to check all of those out. It's a real pleasure for me to introduce Jeff today. Jeff has actually had a profound impact, I would say, on both my academic and professional career. His writings, his lectures, reviews, participating in juries, hearing his commentary has been a constant source of inspiration for me. Really going back to a conference that Jeff organized, I believe it was in 1997, the Microprocesses in Architecture Conference, which was this amazing event. He had invited many of the people who were shaping the discourse at the time and are continuing to shape that discourse. People like Jesse Reiser, Samford Quinter, Greg Lynn, Alejandro Zarapolo, Farshid Mashavi, Robert Somel, Andrew Zago. It was Ben van Berkel, Caroline Voss, Kivi Sotama. Amazing list of participants. As a young student at Columbia, my studio partner at the time, who later became my professional partner, David Erdman, and I both actually drove all the way to Ohio for this event. What was remarkable about that conference was that Jeff really cultivated a discussion about work that was on the table, that these people were doing, that was going on at the moment. The stipulation, as far as I understood, was that Jeff had told the participants, I don't want to see finished work, unlike most conferences where people are presenting projects that are kind of finished, wrapped up, they have a sort of shtick that they're going to present on that project. This was really about showing the issues that these people were struggling with in real time. It was a fantastic experience. Subsequently, many of those people I've been teaching with or on reviews with or on panel discussions. Just that discussion continues to evolve. And I would say that you're all quite fortunate to have the opportunity to interact with Jeff this semester as a interlocutor, a provocateur, and a mentor. And with that, I would like to welcome Jeff. Thank you.
So, hi, thank you, Marceline. Actually, that was in 1995, I think, not 97, but so that makes it, 15 years ago? And that work at the time of that conference was, I would say, 6 or 7 years in development. So from the very first stirrings till now, it's been about 20 years. And I would say it's winding up, not because we're tired of it, but because the problems that have been posed have been solved or are insoluble in a way that is not interesting. There are certain problems that happen that are insoluble. Like, do you remember slumped glass? I don't know, anyone remember slumped glass? For about 5 years, there was this desire to bend glass with double curvature. So if you know anything about glass, it's very easy to bend with rule lines, like on the front of your automobile. But because we were doing blobs, and because people like transparency at the same time, everybody thought, wouldn't it be great if we could do transparent blobs, right? It's an obvious thing to do. And so we spent about 5 years trying to figure out how to do transparent blobs. We built a couple of them, one of them by Eric Moss, and it turned out you got the worst of both worlds. The transparency sucked, and you couldn't see the blob. So it went away. So lots of times in architecture, ideas come and go at the level of the studio or level of discourse or level of project, never see the light of day at all. Important ideas. But the reason I say that is I've just proposed a show at an exhibition at the Wexner Center called The Geometers, which is about all those people that were at that conference and where they are today. And so in a sense, by the time a museum show happens like that, it usually looks like it's announcing something, but within the discipline, it's ending something. So I think that kind of stuff's over. Not over in the sense that, over is a weird word, weird thing. I don't think, why do you think we don't do, are you interested, anybody in here interested in postmodernism? Like in the tradition of historical postmodernism? And why is that? Why not? Do you think you don't like it? Why not? Do you like licorice? Well, if I go get some licorice, will you eat it? Seriously, I mean, you can't end on I like it or I don't like it, but you sure as hell can start on it. I mean, you're not, for example, in auto mechanic school. I assume you don't like to fix cars, right? I don't like, so you're right. You should never end your disciplinary thinking on I like it or don't like it. But if you don't start with I like it or don't like it, then you're fucked. I mean, then what? What do I do now? I don't know. I can't like something. I can't not like something. Anyway, hey, how's the recipe book? So for about 15 years or 20 years, the entire world of architecture, pretty much all over the world, went crazy about postmodernism. Do you think they were all just fucked? All those people were unbelievably stupid, had really bad taste, and didn't, like, how do you explain that to yourself? You can't, the answer, when I ask you what the reason is, you can't say there's a reason. You got to actually tell me the reason. Or you got to guess a reason. Like, how do you imagine that happens? How do you imagine that all of a sudden architects all over the world get really excited about something? I mean, really, all over the world in that particular case. It changes the whole field. Stuff happens. It gets built all over the world. Lots and lots of people win prizes, famous names, and then all of a sudden it fades away. So why do you think that is? Sorry? It's the middle word I can't get. The riddle of meaning. Oh, what a beautiful way to say that. The riddle of meaning. If there were such a thing as meaning, there couldn't be a riddle of meaning. Here's something that occurred to me. See if you think this is true. You ever watch movies that are invisible, like The Invisible Man? So he turns invisible means light passes right through him, right? Are you with me on this? Doesn't that mean he would also have to be blind? Doesn't it mean that since nothing in his body stops the light, catches it, interprets it, and absorbs it, that not only is he invisible, he's blind? Isn't it automatically true that the invisible mind has? So that's shit I think about. And then and I consider that a problem. So on the plane, I thought, oh no, he could see in infrared and ultra. He could see in invisible light. Not that it would be any good. All right. So let me just show you where I am today. This is when I taught a whole lot last term, and then on Thanksgiving Day, I said, fuck it, I quit. And so I went to a lot of thesis reviews and shit like that. I came out here for thesis reviews, but really I just quit. And so this is where my brain is right now. This is my new dog, Ruckus. And that's what we've been doing for the last 5 weeks, is laying around, drinking wine. So that's kind of where my heart is right now. All right. Now, have any of you ever heard me lecture before? You. Where, can I ask where? Which one? Sure. But do you know remember which lecture it was?
I started with primitive vectors.
Ooh. That was a tough lecture. No one else? You? Which lecture? Pratt. Oh, the why bother? That was the first of those lectures. I figure Platt's a blow-away school, so before I got to someplace that paid me like a lot of money, It was the first version of that lecture. I finally finished it at IIT. It's a cartoon lecture. I did a version of it here too, and well, that's enough, don't you think? That's like a pretty good warm up. All right. So before I get started, I'm just trying to figure out where you are. Let me see. The bleach blonde. Is that bleach or color? Yeah, but you bleached it first and then added the color, right? Don't you have to get all the color out and then put that color in? It's one thing, huh? One box. Where are you from? Shit. I should have guessed. I was going to say Sweden. Let me see how tall you are. Stand up. Oh, yeah, that's why. Denmark, see. You need another foot. So why are you in architecture? Hmm? That is such a SCI-Arc answer. It's such a... You never know what to say to that. 85 I will graduate about 1,000 people with a thesis during my time at SCI-Arc, which I assume will be about 10 years. 1,000 people. You think architecture needs 1,000 people from SCI-Arc? Well, what kind of world would, let's say half of them actually got work and then half of them built. That's 250 SCI-Arc professional SCI-Arc project makers. Is that a better world or is that a happy world? Do you like architecture? What's your name? Anne? Huh. Is that short for Anne with an E? But a silent E? Why come to SCI-Arc? Okay, this is the sentence I'm always interested in. It always gets to a point where I get really excited. Different ways of exploring. And then there's always this pause. Because you really want to say, I want to hear what you're exploring. And you say, different ways of doing architecture. Which is where you started. Different ways of exploring. Different ways of doing art. You never actually finish the sentence. That's what I'm asking you. Like, do you like postmodernism? Yes or no? You like it? You like Sterling, Rossi, Michael Graves, Charles Moore. Do you want to do that? Well, what are you doing now? Who's your studio teacher? Andy Zeiger. So, do you like what he does? You came here to study with him? Okay. So, don't worry. It'll be worth your while. I'm just warming back up, just trying to remember how you do this. Is that good? What is that? What is it? Salad? I would love a brownie now, but you know how horrible it is to eat a brownie while you're in front of people giving a lecture. You're spitting on them, your teeth turn black. Okay. If I said, what are the current problems in architecture? Pardon me? So you think there's such a thing as architecture? You think there's such a thing as science? I'm just curious. Do you think there's such a thing as science? Is there such a thing as a scientist?
Yeah.
Who said yes? Okay, that's a interesting, assertive but wrong answer, but we'll get to it. Is there such a thing as a musician? Any of you know a musician? Really? Plays all kinds of music. So if I come up to him and say, listen, I've got a guinea finger piano. Can you play me something on it? Or what's your last, what CD did you buy most recently of Thomas Edis's 12-tone operas? Right? So what's the point here? Is that if you start thinking in terms of architecture, you're already dead. Like if you're in the field of science, there's no such thing as a scientist. You're a cosmologist, or you're an astronomer, or you're an elementary particle astronomer. And if you're an elementary particle astronomer, you don't understand what astronomers are saying. And if you're an astronomer, you don't understand what cosmologists are saying. The fields are so specialized and so rarefied, and the quality of the problem is so intense that it's pointless to speak in terms of science. It gives you no information. It's okay for a general discussion, and it's okay for the lay public to speak about science because they're not scientists. But if you're in the field and you have to work on the field and you have to make contributions to the field, that's a dead end. Same thing with music. Wouldn't you say that's true? Like, if you're in music, you can't imagine that you're going to study all music, solve all music. It's the same for everybody. You're not going to be playing reggae one day and I don't even know what's the black dice? What would you call that? It's that noise the next day, and so I don't think there is such a thing as architecture. I think architecture, like all other fields, has really bifurcated into a large number of genre, and that you're here because you like it or not, you like this genre, which means you have to be an expert in this genre, not in architecture. So that's why I keep asking you why you got into architecture. So the person in front of Anne, you're not from Denmark too, are you? Touch him in the back. There you go. Yeah. Where are you from? Oakland, California. I've heard of that place. They have isn't that near San Francisco, right? Yeah. You could have gone to San Francisco. You could have gone to school there. Studied with all the guys at Berkeley. How come you came here? More about individuals. Very good answer. Probably the best answer I've ever heard from the audience. That's actually the truth of the place. Its ethos is to develop your confidence that you're adequate you're already adequate. And I think that's not necessarily true, but I think it's a reasonable philosophy of approaching work, particularly. Do you think of architecture as a kind of art? Do you think it's a social responsibility? So do you think why do you imagine that indulging your own individual interest would help you meet your responsibilities to others through architecture? Okay. When I asked you if architecture has a social responsibility, you said yes, right? You also said you're mostly also interested in a school that helps you cultivate your own individuality. So it seems just naively that those might be slightly in conflict, that your interest, your self-indulgence, and I don't mean that negatively, what guarantees that it has any value to anybody else so that you would meet your social responsibilities through architecture? Why don't you just say, no, I don't think architecture has any social responsibilities? I do too, but no one, you think art has any social responsibility? The difference between social power, I'm not saying that. Everything has social power. Everything has political power. The question is, does it have responsibilities? So if somebody comes up to you and says, I want you to be my architect, you say, oh, great, I know exactly what I want to do. How's that conversation going to go? It will happen. Actually, it happens all the time. Do you have a model in your mind about what makes that okay, or does that seem like a problem for you? Just no problem. Okay, well then let's go back to this one. Forget all of architecture, but in terms of coming here and your own attitude and your own interest and what you see and now who you're studying with, you've been here for a little while, and you all have a master's degree, right? Are you all graduate? Aren't you all graduate students? You don't have one? Yeah, bachelor's degree. I'm sorry. Yeah, in what? Are you good at math?
Yeah.
You sure?
With what I can, I'm good.
Why'd you leave it?
Because I like this field enough to be talking about now.
You think you'll use your mathematics in?
Not in the same sense as if I stayed in math, no, but I would use it.
So you got an undergraduate degree, but I mean, so you didn't really do a research project. Did you?
Very little.
What was there an area that you were interested in?
Yeah, I'm more interested in differential geometry and topology.
So that's a very interesting answer. Did you hear that? Differential geometry and topology. I know what that is. Your name is? Jack. Jack probably knows a little bit of what that was. You're going to hear topology around here all the time. And if you know anything about what you think you know what it means mathematically, you'll think that's not what it means at all. What do you think of that?
Well, right off the bat, someone mentions topology, something like that.
Hang on. You said two different things, and I want to keep them separate. You said when someone mentions topology or something like that from mathematics, that's wrong. Okay. I'll fix that in a second for you. What? I haven't got started yet. Why do you think that's right? Either. I tell you what, pick the one that puts you at better advantage over me. And let's see. And let's say what you did. Yes, everything about what he said was wrong. It's fair. I don't think he used informal grammar, so it wasn't so bad. But I mean, the idea that a certain topic such as topology belongs properly to one discourse and is borrowed by others is a fundamental flaw that you must learn how to not fall victim to. How's that? What does that mean? Okay. That's interesting. So now I will give a lecture, but I'm not quite ready yet. Are you ready? I mean, where are you in a quarter? It was week 2, so y'all are still fucking around, buying pencils. Have you bought some pencils? Did you love when you were in elementary school go buy school supplies? Did you do that? Like you'd go buy pencils and notebooks, and it would be really exciting, and everything would be clean, and then, I don't know, I would lose mine, or I can't remember. It was so fun, though. I don't know what it was like. You go to, see, you can see now why I was so influential on Marcelin. It must be clear to you, right? Do you know what the corner problem is in architecture? Anybody ever heard of that? Do you know what the corner problem is in mathematics? There isn't one. There is a corner problem in, do you know what a corner is in mathematics? There's no such thing in mathematics as a corner. Like what are the four things that we call corners on a square or a rectangle? No, they're not points. Kiddo, what's the slope of a point? What's the slope of a point? There's any slope. What's the slope of vertices? What's the slope of the point of a corner in a square? Mm-hmm. What's the differential if I were to, what's the slope? You don't know? There isn't one. That's right. It's infinite. But that doesn't mean there are an infinite number of slopes. A point outside of its any regulating geometry has an infinite number of slopes, but it doesn't ever have a slope of infinity. Right? Would that be fair to say? Okay, the corner problem occurs in architecture because when you build the square, what happens? What's the difference between building a square in architecture and building a square in geometry? Yes. But you want me to? That's a shitty third grade joke about, may you repeat the joke? I can, but I may not. Okay. If I were to go out and build a square, really go build a square, no matter whatever construction method or materials you want, it will have properties at those corners that a mathematical square won't have. But in fact, a drawing of a mathematical square does have. What are the properties of a Mobius strip? What'd you say? What's your name? Jack. Like Jack, I'll remember, you're like Jack Black. So you go out of your way to look like Jack Black so people will remember your name. Really? It doesn't take a lot of work? Can you play the guitar? Do a little work. A lot of people say I look like Richard Gere. What? My first laugh. There you go. Because of the hair. Color of my hair. I too dye my hair and my beard. So, what are the properties of a Mobius strip? And are you going to raise your hand? That's cute. That's like high school, right? Wait a minute, I'm going to call on you. You. That's really great. Can't hear you. Okay, that's the property of Mobius strip to an architect, but you're right. Yeah, that's the thing they like, is that if you take a pencil and you draw that piece of paper, there is no inside and outside. It's actually one continuous surface, infinitely connected. So there are not two sides to a Mobius strip. Is that right? Is there such a thing as an architectural Mobius strip? Wow. Shut down quick there, didn't you? Real happy to answer all the math problems. You ever seen a building in the shape of a Mobius strip? Never? Okay. That's fair. If you've never seen one, then your sense is no. You ever seen a building called a Mobius house? Let me see if I'm not sure what I've got here. So what you need me to show you is a building. Oh shit, I forgot the open Okay, I'm slowly getting into it. Here we go. Step one. Oh. Carry me back to old Virginia. Let's see. Now you've seen a building in the shape of a Mobius strip. Yes or no?
Yeah, sort of. Not really.
Not really?
Walk on those walls. You can't walk on the ceilings. I think that's part of the properties that it should possess.
Well, you are in the wrong place. It must have been hitting you now, right? Anything reasonable like that that you would ever want a building to do, you're at the wrong place for that. Have you ever seen? Here, should I run down the street, run outside, grab the first model I see, whatever it is, bring it in here? I guarantee you, you're not going to be able to walk on it, get into it, get out of it. Does that bother you? Mm-hmm. So do you think there's anything to learn? Do you think what you just thought might be wrong? Do I think it might be wrong?
Sure.
Am I certain it's wrong? Will you agree with me when I finish discussing it with you?
Maybe.
Want to bet?
Sure of that?
It's not that I'm sure of it. It's I think there's stuff to know, and I know it. You think there's stuff to know, and not only do you not know the stuff you think there is to know, you don't know the stuff that you don't know that you're supposed to know. One of the stupidest mistakes you can ever imagine, the definition of stupidity is that you imagine you know what you don't know. Not that you imagine you know the answers that you don't know, but that you are aware not only of your intelligence, but also of the field of your ignorance. If you imagine you are in control of your own ignorance, you are the stupidest person on the face of the earth. And the name of that person, the class of people we call those, does anybody know? Republicans. Clearly, it starts in Alaska. I mean, clearly there is a person who doesn't know. I know all about Russia. I see it every day. Or our famous, one of our most famous, now it's true, I'm a Jewish left-wing intellectual liberal. And so I actually think Republicans is the longest running comedy routine in my lifetime. They are hilarious, and I love it when they're around. I love to hear the head of the Republican Party say, my favorite book is War and Peace, and say, it starts like this. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And I'm like, God almighty, at least he knows two books. What a change in the world of Republic. Anyway, I'm sorry. It's good that there are people that think you have to be an idiot to imagine you can run the world, don't you think? You have to be kind of would you like to do that? No. Would you like to run a school, a city? I mean, no. Fortunately, as an architect, you'll have no power. So why do you think, did you study? What was your undergraduate degree?
Acting.
Where'd you study?
NYU.
Wow. So post method or method?
Those are my only spots.
Well, I mean, they don't know enough about acting theory for me to get into the differences of all the versions of method acting and the difference between that and the Chicago school and all the versions of post-method in New York right now. So, but for their sake, you're post-method. Okay. Now, let's just have some fun. But you know method, right? Yeah. You've read method. Yeah. You know the actor prepares. You know the difference between the Stanislavski school and the Lee Meisner school. You know the invention of hand method by Dennis Hopper and Brad Pitt.
No, I've never studied that.
You know why that wasn't done?
No, why?
Method is primarily a body instrument technique. Most films are shot as head shots or head and hand shots. And so Dennis Hopper realized that there had to be a complete revision of the exercises for head and hand shots. And so he developed a set of exercises and techniques that were less about the entire body than about head and hand. His debut of that was in Apocalypse Now. His most important protege was Brad Pitt, who then recapitulated precisely that performance in 12 Monkeys. Did you know this? Okay, but you do know something about method acting. Okay, so you know magic object, magic if, sense memory. Okay, now, I want you to watch this. You know anything about method acting? You ever heard of it? Who's heard of method acting? Okay. What is it?
It's, from what I know of it, it's
Great. What a great way to start. Equally, you could have said, from what I don't know of it. Right. I mean, that's why I love, why damage yourself even worse? Why not just say, I have no idea? But I love it when you say, from what I know of it. So, because you might as well, it's like shooting yourself.
Sure. What I'm going to try to make up of it, it's trying to reinterpret take, I guess, sort of pull up like sense memory, bring up actual real feelings to sort of conjure or convey your emotion.
So, for one thing, it's a form of realism in acting. Right. Who are the actors you associate with it?
Brando, Niro,
Okay, yeah. Okay. And what's the nature of one of the performances? When you see a like, let's pick Robert De Niro. Let's say De Niro in Cape Fear versus Robert Mitchum in Cape Fear. Okay. Do you know De Niro?
Right.
Can you imagine a movie called Cape Fear?
Sure. I live near the Cape Fear River.
Okay, so even if you don't know what the story about at all, imagine there's a movie called Cape Fear, and it's got Robert Mitchum in it. On the other hand, there's a movie called Cape Fear, and it's got De Niro in it. I don't think you need to know anymore. Can't you make some guesses on that basis?
So the nature of the way De Niro acts as opposed to Robert Mitchum?
Yeah.
So I guess maybe De Niro tries to take on the reality of the emotion of being that character, and then maybe Mitchum was taking more of a superficial kind of read or interpretation of creating the sort of emotions of what it is.
That's a very good guess. I mean, generally we associate method acting with over-the-top, evocative, emotive, affective, intensive performances. How did they prepare? Like, how did De Niro prepare for Taxi Driver?
Probably, I would guess, study what it means to be a taxi driver.
Yeah. You love all this. Didn't you love all this? It's hilarious, isn't it? Okay. One of the great method actors was Anthony Hopkins. Although he always hung around it. Chris Walker, Walken is one of the greatest. How did Anthony Hopkins prepare to be using the same answer, Hannibal Lecter?
Did you say he's not a method?
He is. Yeah, so, according to you, he would have gone around and serial killed 10, 15 people and ate their brains, tried to remember what it feel like, and then when he got to the scene, okay. All right, so there's something weird there, right? Why do they call it method acting?
Well, because it's an actual method of work. It's a method to approach your work.
And what are the methods?
I guess a sort of system of process that you kind of go through to sort of develop
Yeah, there's 17 exercises. Magic, if, sense, memory. I mean, they're basically a list of exercises that you are taught. And the actual one that the one that was used on Hannibal Lecter was called Animal Studies. Ever heard it before? You? So, first made famous by Lee J. Cobb, student of Sanford Meisner, when he had to play. Lee J. Cobb was a young, virile, handsome leading man going to do Willie Loman from Death of a Salesman on Broadway. Do you know the character of Willie? Y'all know this at all? Sad guy. Midlife crisis of a sad guy. So in order to see if, how was Lee J. Cobb going to portray? Normally you just put a bunch of makeup on, bend over. And so he used a technique called animal studies. He actually went out and studied. It's a very systematic approach. You study an animal, it takes 5 weeks. Each week is a different exercise. He studied an elephant in the Bronx Zoo. It turns out that Hopkins studied a cat to do Hannibal Lecter. And so that little scene of the cat, that lapping up is a cat lapping. But also, if you watch the scene with Jodie Foster, he studied his cat and he noticed that his cat doesn't blink. 2 things he noticed about cats is they rarely blink, and they also always look at anything that moves as if it's prey. So he gets Jodie Foster to blink a lot. If you watch that first scene, he doesn't blink at all, and she's going like this, nervously blinking, and he's just staring at her. And every time she moves a piece of paper, he follows the paper, like it's just everything. And so it's just a method. It's a method based on how to produce an effect. It's not a philosophy. It's not true. It's not really feeling the feelings. It's sets of tricks that a discipline learns to know because it understands its responsibility is to the effects it produces, not to the achievements of another discipline that it envies that it would like to represent. Is that fair? How are we doing? Got that one? What's the last thing you wrote down? You said it was great. Didn't you say, I said, a discipline has a series of methods to produce effect. They're techniques to produce effects that belong to the discipline rather than representing effects that they envy in other disciplines. Okay, I really want you to focus on this because it's the defining feature of an education at SCI-Arc is 2 things, is focusing on effects and then speculating on the status of received effects and the possibility that they might be open to revision. Revision. So that's why I asked you, you must love postmodernism. Yeah. I know you do, because you're wearing a green Pendleton jacket, and I have not seen one of those since the postmodern period. Is it a true Pendleton? No, really, it's a fake Pendleton? It is LA. Why do you have the jacket on at all? Oh, I see. That makes sense. So you do like postmodernism. Do you have favorites? Just in terms of architectural postmodernism. Boy, how many of you think representation is a bad thing? I mean, do you want to represent mathematics, or do you want to represent painting, or do you want to represent things? Do you like representation? You? Nah, Jack, I'm off Jack. Yes? Yes? Yes. I like to do it, I don't like to eat it. But my puppy seems to have different, you're talking to a guy, I don't puzzle over these things. I'm gonna give you a yes or no answer to every question you answer me. You can go through life making life really complicated by exploring the mysteries of meaning, or the riddles of meaning. Do you know who Maria Ouspenskaya is? What's your name? Age? Oh, man. Were you the eighth son? Is there an A, B, C, D, E, F, and G before you? They were into heroin? Is it a nickname you took upon for yourself? They liked Kafka. Have you heard all these before, right? You've heard the Kafka joke before? Fuck. So you don't think I can think of an original joke having to do with age? You're right. It's such a fucking dumb name, it's hard to go. How do you spell it? A-I-T-C-H. Fuck you. You know, you spent a lot of time with me at this school. You're going to, if you want to graduate. Yes. See, very simple. That's a threat. Not a warning. I would. Do you know who Maria? So H. What's your last? No, let me guess. Goldstein. H. Really? You can't be. H isn't a Jewish name. I'd say. M would be a Jewish name. No, H. Clark. I love that. Do you have a middle name?
Ryan.
H. Ryan Clark. You know, I know people that have taken middle initials without a name because they like the rhythm of the name. So H. Ryan Clark, it's a beautiful name. It's like F. Remember F? F. Scott Fitzgerald. There was no F. How about this one? Do you think there's a... You never heard F before, did you? And what's the guy? M.C. Escher. Do you know what those stood for? Do you think they stood for anything? Mauritius Claude, I think. Is right. Okay. So let's try a couple quick exercises and think. I'm just curious. Do you know who Maria Ouspenskaya is? Any of you? Any of you fans of old horror movies? Like The Wolfman, Frankenstein, all those Whale, what was his name? James Whale? No? There was this old gypsy woman who would be she would be in a carriage. She met the werewolf and she said, "You have the sign of the pentagram on your hand." Remember that? By the way, where does the sign of the pentagram come from? Why is it considered mystical? No one knows? It's the Pythagoreans. It was the symbol of their secret society, and you had one on your hand, and that's how you got into the meetings. Do you know why do you know who Hippus was? Hippas. He was a member of the Pythagoreans. They murdered him. They drowned him. Do you know why? Because they had arrived at a proof that the diagonal of a square was an irrational number, which violated their fundamental principle that everything was based on real and rational numbers. And so it was a secret that he got drunk in a bar and explained to somebody, and they murdered him. It's a great story, don't you? Should have come to SCI-Arc. Okay, Maria Ouspenskaya was the protege of Stanislavski and had studied with both Pavlov and Stanislavski and was brought to the United States to introduce method acting. And they would give her these bit parts in old movies to pay her. Shit you know when you don't have anything to do, but like me, I have nothing to do. I sit on airplanes, I come talk to children at different places. I don't really do anything. Let's try this. Back to Jack, and then we're going to get on. The deal I'm trying to get at here is two things. One is there is stuff to know. It's not how to build. What do you like? What do you think you're going to learn here? Software? Is that what you think? You think, what a great place because you'll learn software and digital fabrication. A period in architecture, practically since the Renaissance, runs about 20 years. And it's usually associated with a set of technologies and a set of philosophies and a set of material practices. So from High Renaissance to Mannerism is about 20, from Mannerism to Baroque is about 20, end of Baroque. Now it's true that Baroque took 60 years to spread over Europe, but in each place it had about a 20-year period. Postmodernism is about 20 years. I just got through telling you that the first generation of the postmodern interest in geometry that, you know, Greg Lynn and those guys lasted about 20 years. So it's not going to really be important to you in the level of these are what I learned in school, and so I'm now going to apply them, like being a dentist. So you have to learn how to approach, how to develop a problem out of what your work. In other words, you have to see how problems evolve and lead to new problems, and you have to get ready to work on those, not be practitioners of what you learn in school. It just won't work. If you want to be a practitioner with what you learn at school, you should go to a different school that's involved in producing professional practice architectures.